So what you saw me do is I just routed those tails on those boards. And this is the lead D4 dovetail jig. And as you can see by the little diagram here, in the grayscale, it shows pictures of the tails. That's the mode we're in right now in the jig. And you can see these series of fingers along through here. We have these fingers that are coming out like this. This is what sets the pattern, and these are totally adjustable. I can move these any spacings I want. So what we have on the router, we have a dovetail bit. Let's see if I can get it here. We have a dovetail bit that cuts that dovetail, and we have a rub collar. We have this rub collar right here. And that little collar right there, it follows this pattern. It comes in and follows this pattern right here. And then I come over to the next, and then it follows that pattern. Over to the next, right on down to the end. Then I flip the board like you saw. I flip it end for end to come down to the other end of the jig. I have the one end that's down here. Then I flip the board end for end, and I come down to the same pattern that I've carefully set up on this edge. And I do the same thing. I just follow those grooves. And what the reason it has to have the similar pattern on either end of the jig is you see this spacing right here on this one set of pins, on this set of fingers. You can see I have a gap here. These others don't have a gap. This has a wider gap, which makes that dovetail bigger. So that's in relationship to the end, and then we have the same on this end, but since it's on opposite ends of the boards, I have to flip the board around. And what that wider pin does on the joints, if you look at the joint, it's hard to see, but you can see that this pin, where a pin's going to fit, not the tail, but the pin is going to fit in this slot. It's wider than this one. And it's the same on this end. It's wider on here than it is there. And the reason for that is once I put the sides in and fit and glue them, then I need to part the box off and make the top. So I have to split the box. So what I do is I set up my saw. When I cut the box in two, I put the saw blade right in the middle of this pin. And then I just cut right down to the middle of that pin. That parts the box off and makes the top. And then what it does is when you then glue the box back together, after you part it off, of course you lose the material of the saw blade. But what that does is I've got this pin is wider than this one by the amount of the saw blade, so that once it glues back together, this pin will look approximately the same width as that one, and the joint disappears. You just don't see it. So that's why we do that. So what I'll do now is I'm going to flip the jig around. These bars, they come off this jig, and I turn it over. I take these fingers and I flip this over to the other side. So I bring this pattern to the front of the jig. And this pattern will then be in a different mode to cut the pins. And I'll show you that in a minute.